Senator Timmy Dooley.
First of all, can I congratulate you on your election and elevation to this high office. It's something that you're well overdue in terms of your work rate and your commitment to public service. Like others, I too have been contacted by many councillors throughout the country over the last number of days. And in travelling and meeting councillors, it's clear that you have played a very important role in cementing the relationship between the Oireachtas and local representatives in county council. So you well deserve the accolade and the position today. And now the work begins. And I know you have the tenacity, the capacity and the ability and the grounding in public life through your contact with councillors to do a really good job. And I wish you well, and obviously I'll work with you in doing that. I also want to recognise the appointments of Senator Regina Doherty and Lisa Chambers to Leader and Deputy Leader. There has been a lot of talk about the historic significance of the coming together of the three parties in particular, but I suppose more specifically coming together of the two parties, the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, to form a government, and the positiveness that are from that. And as I reflected the appointment of Senator Doherty, I saw one of the practical positives of that was not to have to face her across a television studio, where she was always a very forthright campaigner, and it will be much easier to be on the same side rather than opposite her. And I say that in the greatest possible respect to her. She's somebody who I have admired for a long time from the other side of the House. Look, we've talked a lot about different issues today, but no doubt there are some very significant challenges facing us. When we contested various elections over the last number of months, health and housing were to the fore, and the two most important issues, I think, on which the general election was fought on. They are still there and have to be addressed. But since that, we've had that really unexpected bolt from the blue of the pandemic crisis around COVID-19, and the very, very significant challenges that poses on us, and really will reorient how we do business from here on. It's going to challenge the public purse, it's going to challenge the economy, as it already has. I suppose in talking about the pandemic, it's important that we recognise the very significant loss of life that has taken place, and I think we do need to reflect on that, not just for the people who have passed, but for their families, their friends, their relations who weren't able to, I suppose, go through the normal process of a funeral. And that has really, a very significant bearing on the lives of so many. Many lives have been shattered, not just those who have lost loved ones, but those who have lost jobs. And we see today the opening up or attempting to open up of other sectors of the economy. And sadly, there are many small businesses who unfortunately won't be able to face into the next level of reopening, because they just don't see any possibilities for them. So there is a huge amount of work that we will have to do to try to recalibrate the economy and get people back to work. I think we should also pay due recognition to all the frontline workers, and a lot of mention has been made of the healthcare workers, and they have worked extraordinarily hard at a difficult time. But there are others in the front line, whether it's in law enforcement, both prison guards and army, water, sewerage and sanitation frontline workers who risk lives as well, the retail sector, retail workers, supply chain, transport, both public and private, electricians and plumbers, and indeed the postman, who's often forgotten when we talk about frontline workers. So we must embrace all of that sector, some who are really undervalued in society. We place a lot of value in this country on education, and rightly, and we sometimes overvalue certain sectors of society. But when we're faced with a pandemic like this, we really see and recognise and perhaps realise the people who we absolutely depend on when all chips are down, and I think we need to give recognition to that. Like others, I just want to maybe pass a general comment in relation to the notional lack of presence in the Cabinet of balanced regional development in terms of the positions. The reality is that ministers are appointed, and there's at least one former minister here, a couple actually, both junior and senior, and they will recognise that their roles in those positions were not about bringing the goodies to their constituency. They represent, as head of a department, all the country. And really the role of us and those in the other house is to make the case on the behalf of the people that we represent, to ensure that there's a fair hearing given to the needs of the various communities that we represent. So I, for one, will be fighting hard on behalf of the constituency of County Clare, which I have had the tremendous honour to represent in the past. And there are real challenges there. Indeed, I want to recognise Senator Garvey's presence here too. Good friend of mine, lots of connections there, and who I know will also be a champion of the issues. But there are real issues in the Midwest. There are real issues around the continued importance of Shannon Airport, the attempt to find a resolution to our energy crisis, recognising that Moneypoint will no longer play the major role that it did. But there are communities who have survived and built up around that area that now need to find an alternative. And I made a lot of stock, I think, in the last Dáil about ensuring that a just transition wasn't just for the Midlands. Yes, it's important there, but we have to look now at a just transition, not just in the energy sector, but there will be a requirement for a just transition to assist people to transition away from some of the employment opportunities that are no longer there as a result of the pandemic. There are certain small businesses, particularly in the tourism and hospitality sector, which will never open again, but they supported 2 and 3 and 4 workers. And I'm often taken by the way in which there's public outcry if 100 jobs are lost, and rightly so. But sometimes there's 100 small businesses that go overnight that were employing 4 and 5 people, and nobody talks about it. So I think we must reflect now on where we're at and the challenges that we face, and try to find solutions for the people that we represent. And that's, first of all, getting people back to work. But it's not forgetting the crisis that existed previously and still does in the health service. A very significant number of people now still waiting, greater numbers than ever. And the housing crisis, you know, something which has bedevilled the past 2 administrations. We cannot again allow ourselves to ignore that situation. The most basic expectation of any man, woman or child is to have a roof over their head and know where they're going at night. And I think if we're to have any success over the course of this Parliament, attaching such significance to resolving those couple of problems, I think would serve us all well and serve the country well. Thank you.